Hello and welcome to the week 3, the third episode. This is the end of week 2, our third episode of Around the Valley for the 25-26 season. It's a great time. We got a lot of things kind of hitting in the pipeline. I'm not going to waste too much more time. So as always, I'm Arshav Yarsarian, joined by Kenny Hodges again today. It'll be the two of us giving you the content you want and ask for on this platform when we do this. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Kenny, how you doing?
Man, I am doing great as always. It's always fun when we get on here and talk about what's going on, talk about the football season, talk about all, the changes in the air. Well, I wish they were changing in there. Still hot as hell out here. But nonetheless, we got a lot of hot action. We got a lot of things to kind of talk about, and we got some surprises. We got some disappointment. We got a little bit of everything. So without further ado, let's look back, shall we, to week 2. Let's go over the scoreboard final. Starting over at Fulton, the early game in the early afternoon. Panorama kept it rolling. They go into Fulton and win the game 35-6. Over to Hoover, Verdugo, good effort, but came up just a bit short as they drop another game. And Hoover takes the win 22-20. Over to Belmont. Monroe goes on the road. Big bounce back after the loss against Taft with a big 46-zip shutout over Belmont. Chatsworth hosted Westlake, came up on the short end of the stick. They lost 31-0. Cleveland hosted Crespi. Cleveland had a good effort, but Crespi offense was just a little too much. Crespi takes the win 44-16. Over in Ventura, Elko goes on the road to Grace Brethren. They had a heck of a back and forth game. A late score by Grace. They take the win 31-29. Grant hosted Legacy. They came up on the short end of the stick 28-8. Birmingham went on the road to Moore Park. It's always difficult going on the road playing against these Southern Section teams, but this is what Birmingham does. But they came up on the short end of the stick 38-13 against Moore Park. Over in Van Nuys continues to keep it rolling offensively early in the year. They hosted Roybal, and they took the win easily. They breezed 32-6. Over at Canoga Park, a heartbreaker for the Canoga Park Hunters. They had the lead late, couldn't hold on to it. A late score by Hawkins in the last 2 minutes of the game. Hawkins takes the win on the road 32-27. Over at Palisades, this one was an offensive shootout between Granada and Palisades, but the Dolphins taken at home 59-44 over Granada Hills. Over at Maywood, Reseda went on the road. They struggled a bit. They lost 54-0 on the road against Maywood. Over at Taft, Nathan Swinson and that Taft Torador offense continues to roll. They have hosted a short underman Arleta squad. They take the win 43-21. Over at Chavez, Selmar went on the road. They needed a win. They wanted to get one in the win column. They beat up Chavez 42-6. Over in Santa Clarita, Kennedy goes on the road to Canyon, and they take a win over a Southern Section opponent, 29-21, a big win there to get them back on the winning path. And last but not least, over in San Fernando, the Tigers continue to keep it rolling. They beat Poly 48-8 at home. So those were your week 2 scores. So let's move into initial reactions from the weekend. Okay. We had a lot go on. We had some teams continue to keep that O in the loss column and stay unbeaten. I'll ask you, what was your biggest takeaway from the action that happened in week 2?
My kind of thing is there were numerous blowouts this weekend. And at first glance, you want to say, wow, there's a big disparity between haves and have-nots, right? At this point, there's 3 undefeated still that are playing out of the Valley Mission. Ultimately though, I still rest on it's still pretty early, right? League play is about to roll, and especially these teams that are getting beat pretty bad. It's time to put everything together. You took your lumps and start to, like I said, put it together for this week because, hey, 7-team leagues like East Valley, they're jumping into league play this week. So that's the big thing I'm looking at is like despite blowouts, despite some records, what have you learned, and are you ready to apply it in league play? Because it's about to get serious.
Yeah, for sure. Like, to me, the theme or the thing I've taken away from coming out of week 2 is hunger. Because now when you kind of look at how things have kind of shaken out from these first 3 weeks, you look at the Valley Mission and you see a bunch of teams that are all saying to themselves, hey, man, we got a shot to do something really good here this year. And then conversely, you look at the East Valley and I'm seeing a bunch of teams that are hitting that point of desperation of like, okay, we gotta turn it around like now to get this thing going. Because when you look at the Valley Mission, here's a stat for you with how well the Valley Mission has started the year. Even taking into account Reseda struggles at 0-3, the win percentage of that league through the first 3 weeks is 700, 14-6, and that's with Reseda not being in the win column yet. So even if you remove them, and we know they're kind of rebuilding and they're trying to get things turned around in that program. So even if you remove them from it, the win percentage is even better in terms of how the league in general has started the year. And that's taken into account Kennedy playing a tough schedule and still having a good record. When you look at, like you talked about with Panorama, Van Nuys, and San Fernando all being 3-0, like this league is really truly going to be a gauntlet. And then conversely, you look at the East Valley with Monroe and Arleta are the only teams in those leagues that have wins through the first 3 weeks. So now you're looking at, and that's not to say that these teams don't have potential, that they can't turn it around, but it's going to be crabs in a bucket with everybody kind of scratching and clawing, just trying to find their way into the win column as we get into the East Valley. And mind you, coming into the year, one of my big predictions was that the league was wide open. I mean, it's still wide open, but now it feels like it's wide open for the opposite reasons that I thought we were going to see more of what you're seeing in the Valley Mission, where teams kind of got out and were rolling, but it's been the opposite. So, I mean, it makes for wide open football in both regards, because who knows what's going to happen with the Valley Mission and who knows what's going to happen in the East Valley. The West Valley is kind of copacetic, but even with that, I don't think any of us saw Taft being 3-0, potentially being 4-0 when they play Eagle Rock in a couple of weeks. I don't think any of us saw that coming, but we'll get more into that. But we'll leave the initial reactions there. Let's go to the question of the week. I'm looking at the Valley Mission to kind of dive into the Valley Mission. We all came into the season talking about Kennedy being the front runner, being the team that we kind of looked at the landscape and said, man, with that quarterback, with that coach, with what they've built, it's going to be them and then everybody else. But now we head into week 3 and we're seeing the quality of play coming from these teams. Kennedy, to me, still is the favorite. But if I were to ask you, when looking at Panorama, Van Nuys, and San Fernando, are any of these teams a threat to Kennedy taking that Valley Mission away from them?
Easy answer is to stand on what we said in the beginning of the year, right? And say Kennedy's going to take it. They haven't shown any reason why they're not, right? Look at the way they've scheduled and how they've performed against some difficult opponents. But ultimately, I'm going to come back to that same answer. Things have changed so much in the last 3 weeks of football that you look at it and you go, they're going to be in some dogfights to have to keep that crown. Ultimately, I believe they do. But I'm looking at, those are at least going to be 3 dogfights. All these teams are going to go in there. They're going to muck it up. They're all going to battle. And would I be surprised if one of them knocks off Kennedy? No. Do I think Kennedy ultimately still takes the crown? Yes.
My initial inclination would be to say, yeah, it's still Kennedy. There's one of those 3 teams, and they're all going to be flies in the ointment. Panorama, the way how physical they are, the way they run the ball, they workmen like these dudes damn near show up to games carrying briefcases and lunch pails because they coming in to do work. This is what the Pythons do when they show up. You're gonna play football. for 4 quarters, and they're gonna keep coming at you. That's just the way Beltran has built that team. Those kids are just tough. They're in it every week. Van Nuys, we love what Osorio's doing there with those boys. That offense is fun to watch, throwing the ball around the yard. They play with pace and precision. They're fun to watch. You know you're going to get points on the board when you're playing against Van Nuys. But it's something about San Fernando this year, and I've watched all of their games. It's something about this three-headed monster they have right now with these three seniors. Melvin Pineda, a name that we've been familiar with for a couple of years because he's been playing toting the rock for them since his sophomore year. So this is third year at varsity level. This kid showed that he could ball out. The last 2 years, his name has been in the mix in terms of when you're talking about the Valley Mission Player of the Year. His name is always in that mix. First team running back. That's we know that to be there. But this quarterback, Julian Sarzo, his dual threat in terms of being able to throw the ball, but when things break down, be able to make a play. It is very Diego Montez-ish in terms of what he can do. But then they have this weapon in Andrew Newchurch. Big, long receiver. I watched him, and I was watching the game with my son, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, that guy kind of reminds me of that guy that was at Cleveland a couple of years ago that we watched." And he was like, "Corey Hall." I'm like, you know what? Because he's big, long, he's lanky. They put the ball in his hand and out of the backfield. They throw it to him out wide. But also, he's probably their biggest hitter on defense. And he's always around the ball. So they have this thing going with these seniors that feels like while people aren't paying attention, this could be a real issue for Kennedy to have to deal with, dealing with this three-headed monster that San Fernando's built. So if you had to hold my feet to the fire, I'm going to say if there's any team in this triumph that I think could really give Kennedy a run for their money, it might be this senior-laden San Fernando team. They're a team to watch for. So that's where I'm kind of leaning. I just like what I've seen from them. I like the way their seniors are kind of carrying the team. And if you look at outside of that 7-6 game they played to open, these last 2 weeks they've just been putting their hammer down on their opponent. So watch out for this San Fernando team. Kennedy might have something to deal with there. But we'll leave that there. I think you said you wanted to throw something out there. You wanted to mention something on the flag side because it's something that we kind of haven't had a chance to kind of delve into, but there might be some special things happening on the flag side that you wanted to mention. What you got for me?
Yeah, see, what kind of goes unnoticed in everything we do is we might not have a reporter everywhere. We might not be able to put someone, out to go watch certain games. The scheduling gets tough with the way we're currently set up, right? But it doesn't mean we're not watching. And the craziest thing to me is as I was scrolling through and I was taking my looks and what do we have that people might not have noticed? What needs to be talked about that isn't being talked about? This girls' flag football season is off to one heck of a start. And I'm real quick, I'm gonna go by the leagues and just talk about these league leaders, right? Verdugo Hills won a city title in their first season, and then this season they're starting off pretty decent, had some decent opponents. They're 4-2, doing pretty good. They're on top of the East Valley. In the West Valley, a couple teams haven't gotten started. The one that everyone seems to want to keep an eye on, just like in 11-man, right? Birmingham gets started this week, but Cleveland quietly, very, very quietly, is sitting at 4-1, and they've taken care of business pretty good. The one that really, really kind of caught me and made me go, this is one we're going to have to make time to pay even closer attention to is Panorama. These girls are 7-0, and they have put beatings down on everybody. And this is a statement type season for them. And it's exciting to follow, and it's definitely one that we're going to be keeping an eye on as we go.
Yeah, for sure. That Panorama team, I mean, you talk about a special start. No one's 7 games, they've given up 1 score in 7 games, giving up 1 score. And we're not talking about a team that hasn't, like, you know, they've got wins over Alameda, they got wins, they beat Narbonne. Like, they've really, and those were the tough teams, and they didn't score against them. So, and everybody else, they've done exactly what you should do when you're a superior opponent. That's just put belt to behind every week. So yeah, we are watching. We're going to continue to watch and support. And hey, good luck to our teams, especially Panorama. Continue to keep putting that work in. And there might be a championship coming this year with that team when all is said and done. So, all right. Let's look ahead to week 3. Now it's a little bit of a lighter slate than we've been, because now we're getting into that part of the year where teams are kind of settle into their bye weeks. We got a bunch of teams on byes. Birmingham, our leader, gets a well-needed and well-deserved rest to try to kind of get some recovery in and try to get some guys back on the field. Monroe, this will be a happy bye week for them sitting at 2-1. And Chavez and Grant will also be on byes this week as they kind of take the week to kind of recover, try to, you know, put the pieces together and kind of before they head into league play. But looking at the week 3 slate, we've got a bunch of inter-league matchups, all Valley matchups. Verdugo's at Taft, Granada's at Kennedy, Poly at Selmar, Fulton at Van Nuys, San Fernando's on the road at Alameda. That one's interesting. And you got Elko at Panorama. So, of all those games in week 3, what's a game that kind of has your eyes? You think that could be a one that could have an interesting story coming out of it?
Man, as much as the Tina is probably one that we would want to name kind of the game of the week if the Gems were still game of the week loaded. Honestly, you know, I'm looking at an Elko Panorama or a San Fernando Alameda as the two that are going to tell more stories in terms of what these teams are. You know, now again, I just mentioned 3 matchups with Valley Mission teams, and because that's kind of where we are at this point in the season, when these are statement times for them before they head in the league for them in week 4. You know, I'm glad you threw out Verdugo Taft. That was one I was kind of looking at. Verdugo really feels like they got hosed. They had 5 touchdowns that were called back. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a hard one when you really feel like you were the better team and you played the better game and you had 5 touchdowns called back.
You lose a game by 2 points and you had 35 points taken off the board potentially. Like, yeah, there's no way you don't come out of that salty, you know?
Yeah. You know, so that was one, like I said, I'm glad you put it there because it'll be interesting if they take that and they want to take that aggression out on Taft. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is a Taft team that has been beaten up on the East Valley League. So yeah, it's going to be a good one there. But yeah, the two that I'm really, really looking at, Elko Panorama, San Fernando Alameda, because San Fernando is going against the Southern Section team. Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting. And Panorama going into Elko. Elko has quietly put a few things together. You know, they're looking to maybe not be a top team in the West Valley this season, but they're a team that wants to make some noise and probably go on a deep playoff run, and you can kind of feel it. So that's there.
The Tina will be a good game. It always is. Styles make fights. Granada has a way of, because even against even this past week against who did they play? Pally. they made Pally have to keep scoring because they just keep coming. So it was a shootout because the team who eventually won had no choice but to keep scoring to win that game, because Granada is going to run at you. They're going to come and they're going to go and they're going to go and they're going to go. 4th and 3 doesn't matter. 4th and 8 don't matter. We going. They don't. I don't even know if this team even has a punter, because they don't really care about. They go to every down, they use it. So you know what you're going to get from that game, and a neighborhood rivalry. Stadium's always packed. People get into it for the Tina. Hopefully the winner doesn't break the Tina, because that's also kind of part of the lineage too. But but yeah, you're right. Elko and Panorama is so interesting because, man, Panorama wins that game. We're all of a sudden now, what I just said about San Fernando is like, oh, excuse me, you got to add us in too. But also for Elko, this is also a great litmus test when they're getting ready to head in the league, because Panorama is going to play you tough. Like, you can't just show up to play that game. It's not enough to just show up against Panorama, because they will beat you. San Fernando Alemany, I don't know if you expect San Fernando to win, but I know personally, talking to people intimately around this, and it is a rivalry, especially for people on the San Fernando side, is because that school's down the street, and there is a little bit of a public school versus private school. Oh, those kids think they're better than us because they go to that school, but we all come from the same neighborhood, sort of vibe to that game. So San Fernando will go in there 3-0, brimming with confidence, looking to make a statement against a team that's still, they're in the southern section, they're still searching for their first win, but we already know when you start talking about those parallels with those teams. But again, another game, if San Fernando doesn't win, but they play that game to within a touchdown, we come out of that also like, oh boy, okay, you might have to worry about them. And same thing, Taft, for all the good work that Taft has done. I know, we all know, Eagle Rock's coming into that building in 2 weeks. And that's a chance to really make a statement in terms of where we are headed into the West Valley. Is this a trap game for a Taft? A team that's still building. Are they going to get caught looking at Eagle Rock in 2 weeks and think because they beat our leader and they've been beaten up on East Valley that Verdugo is going to walk in this door and it's just going to be, oh, we can just roll them over? Because if that's the case, we might be looking up in the fourth quarter and this might be a whole different type of ball game. So those games are intriguing, as well as everything else that we have in the Valley. But of course, we can't get out of here without holding our feet to the fire. Let's do some predictions. And you know what? We're going to do those games we just talked about. Those are the games we're going to lay some predictions on. So let's start with the Tina. All right. We know Granada and Kennedy. I actually think that playing the game at Kennedy is always, well, saying Stanley's, because it doesn't matter where the Stanleys were. You could put them on a beach. You could put them in a tar pit. That speed was going to show up. But I think that Kennedy has a distinct advantage when they play their games at home, in terms of that track, in terms of how that field is. Who you got winning that game, Granada or Kennedy?
I mean, that was the perfect setup. Kennedy, I think Kennedy takes it. It really, really is a home field advantage for them playing at home. And I'm at a point where there's gonna have to be some really, really hard press for me to not pick these guys week in and week out.
Yeah, I think I'm there too. Like I said, playing at home with that quarterback. Like I said, Granada's going to make you score points, but as we know with Kennedy, that's never a problem for them. They're going to put points up. And as we saw in week 0, they're not afraid of a track meet. They had one with Eagle Rock. They're not scared to have to play a game where we go up and down fast break football. So I'm going to go with Kennedy on that one as well. Let's go to Elko and Panorama. Panorama at 3-0. Looking to stay unbeaten, but they've got a tough West Valley opponent in Elko who almost stole one from a Southern Section team on the road last week. So we know they'll be chomping at the bit to get back to it. Who you got in this game?
Initially, it was going to be, this is really, really tough. I'm leaning kind of Elko. But I think the game being in Panorama, I'm going to go Panorama. Really, really close game. But yeah, Pythons.
Of the four, this is probably the one I struggle with the most in terms of who I think is going to win. And it's because, again, styles make fights. I think Panorama is going to try to drag this game to a halt in terms of like just grind it down, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, eat that clock, not allow Elko to try to push the pace, of put a lot of points on the board. Panorama is a team that likes to live in the uncomfortable if they have to, and they know that's a way to beat better teams. So I know they're going to, like a python, they're going to constrict and try to squeeze this game down. But it's something about this Elko team that I think, just from what we've seen from them early going, even that Heritage game, they fought. You know, they couldn't punch, they couldn't put away opportunities, but they fought tooth and nail in that game. So I think Elko will come in, and I think they'll eke one out. But I do think that when we come out the other side of this, we're going to look at both of those teams as teams that are going to be real contenders for their league titles coming out the other side of this game. I think both teams are going to show us that they're going to be the real deal. But I'm not going to waffle and pack out. I will put my name on. I think Elko comes in and they eke out a very, very close victory. All right, Verdugo, Taft. Nathan Swinson is hot at quarterback for Taft. They're chucking the ball all over the place. It's good times over at Taft right now. But they've got a very ornery, ticked off Verdugo team coming in who feels like they should have a W on the board, and they know they need to get one this week. Verdugo and Taft, who you got?
You know what? If I keep talking, I'm just going to waffle back and forth. So I'm going to go with the heart and say Verdugo Hills.
Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, this game, I think this game is going to be close. I think this game will be closer because, like I said, I think there is a small part of, is Taft going to be able to kind of remain focused when they might be looking at their next two opponents and saying that this is the easier one and the harder contest is coming into their building in 2 weeks. I think there's a little bit of that. And sometimes when you get kids and the focus is not there, you start seeing the penalties, you start seeing the mistakes, and Verdugo might be able to come in, take advantage of that a little bit. But nevertheless, I really, really like what I've seen from Nathan Swinson and that Taft offense. I think they keep it going. I think it'll be close, but I do think Taft will come out on the other side with the win. Last but not least, we'll go, I'll throw two at the same time. San Fernando Alemany, but also Fulton Van Nuys, because I think that one also might be a little bit of a tricky game because Fulton is better than what their record has indicated. It's just tough. Like I said, that transition back to 11-man, they graduated a bunch last year. So they'll be back. I think they'll be better for everything they're going through at the end of the year, but it's obviously tough right now. But this is still a team that you cannot overlook. So that Van Nuys Fulton matchup, who you got for that one?
Continually tugging at that heart right there. These are two teams that I got to spend a good amount of time with during the summer, getting to know parts of the programs. We told their stories. If you have not yet read it, jump on that. These are stories that deserve to be told. Check them out. There's a spotlight on each team. Ultimately, for me, I think as it being a home game, because this is what happened last time they faced. It was a home game for Van Nuys. Actually, Fulton pulled off the upset. So I think this one, Van Nuys takes it. They took the rematch in the playoffs last year. It was a really, really hard-fought game. Mm-hmm. I think this one goes down the wire, and Van Nuys takes it.
Yeah, this is the rubber match from with these two teams. Man, it's tough. It's tough because, like I said, I'm right there with you. I am a believer in Fulton. I believe in what that coach and that coaching staff is building there. I think, I'm glad that they got pushed and challenged to jump back into 11-man, because I do believe that what that staff has built there, it won't be hard to get kids to want to buy in and play in that program going forward in the next 4 or 5 years, where we might be talking about Fulton not just being in the East Valley, but thriving and being one of the programs that you have to contend with every year. I think that's the trajectory of that program. But like football is cyclical. Kids, it's not the NFL where you can get somebody under contract and they stay around for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You're going to have turnover. Kids become seniors and your leadership sort of graduates, and then you kind of have to build that back up. And that's, I think, is just a slight difference in those two teams right now. I think Van Nuys might have a little bit more in that leadership and continuity, whereas Fulton is building back to that. But nevertheless, I think that this team comes out is a little bit desperate this week. I think they might be able to catch Van Nuys slipping and play him close and steal it at the end. So I'm going to go Fulton this week, just because they need that W. And this feels like a week in which they can kind of get one. Van Nuys is a very, very good team, but I think that the Fulton style of play, they can give Van Nuys a game here. It's tough going on the road, but I think they can kind of do it. And the last but not least, we'll wrap up with San Fernando Alemany. Obviously, we know what we expect here, but what's your opinion on what you think is going to happen with this game?
I think it's going to be a bat. I think San Fernando is just going to come in there and do what they do regarding rivalry. This is a game that should be played every year. Mm-hmm. If these teams need to figure a way out to play this game every single season, because it will continue to put something on the line, create a brand new tradition. I know they've got the one, the big one with Stillmore, right? The battle for that part of the valley. But this one feels, because they are so close in proximity. Ultimately, though, as much as I think San Fernando is going to come in and trying to make a statement, I think Alemany takes this one.
Yeah, I think that this is a game that should be the week 0 game every year. I'm right there with you. This should be a week 0 matchup every year, kicking off football in San Fernando, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great litmus test just to see where you need to get to every year for the Tigers. And also for Alemany, it's an opportunity to kind of work your way into the season. I think it benefits both teams, even if you think that Alemany is a team that's going to, just because the resources of their program, it's not necessarily a feasibly winnable game for one side. But there are benefits for both sides of playing this game every year. The San Fernando kids get to match up, get to measure themselves, and the Alemany kids get a chance to get a win under their belt and kind of work their way into the season 2 when they have to play a tough Southern Section 2. And it's good for the neighborhood. Get everybody packed into these stadiums. When these Bishop Alemany is a team that travels, and if they only got to go a few minutes down the street, they pack their side of the stands. We know the San Fernando people show up, and it's vice versa. When they play that game at Alemany, the San Fernando people show up. So it's just a great matchup. It's a great game. It's a great time. But this is going to be a year in which we're going to come out of this game saying, oh boy, San Fernando might have something. Because I'm going to go all out and say it. I think they can win it. I think that they've got, when the way Melvin Pineda runs the football, the way Julian Sarzo runs the football, the way Newchurch runs the football, the way he can catch the ball, the way they can use this kid. They use him, and my son was right from this standpoint. That is a very lofty bar to mention anybody with what Corey Hall did the last couple of years. But just from the sheer optics of how they use this kid in the offense, in terms of they'll just flat out send the quarterback out wide and direct snap it to this kid just to put the ball in his hands. I like what they're building. I like the toughness and the attitude of that team. And I'm going to go out there and say San Fernando's going to win the game. They're going to win it by a score. So I might look foolish, but that doesn't matter. It's because we are homers and we represent our kids at the end of the day. And that's what's most important. And what's also important is your support. So thank you guys every week for checking out our stories. Go to valleysportstelegram.com. You'll see all the interesting stories we have up for the week. We got Power List. The volleyball Power List is getting put up today on Monday. That on the day of us recording this podcast. It'll be up today. I wanted to put it out last week, but I thought it might be better to wait through the weekend. We had a bunch of tournament play, so we got the volleyball Power List coming. The football Power List will be coming today. I hold myself to it. As also on the day of this recording, we'll get that football Power List to you as well. The Valley Gems will be coming later in the week. Also this week, look out for the Roundtable. This next episode of the Roundtable, where we, as our senior staff, we kind of take the quarter tent mark poll of the season, and we kind of talk about what we've seen and what we're going to see kind of going ahead, and make some predictions as we head towards, as we're speeding towards the midway point. And as usual, make sure if you're watching this, like, comment, subscribe here on our VST YouTube channel. We're going to continue to bring this content as we create it, because it's always about our kids and we appreciate the support. Make sure you check us out. So with that being said, for Arshavir Sarian and your boy Kenny Hodges, this has been another episode of ATV. We'll check you guys next week. Peace.